Hello, everybody, and welcome to Teachers in the Dungeon. Sorry, I am stuffed. They feed so well down here in the dungeon.
Extra spoon of gruel for Thanksgiving.
Oh, yes.
Wonderful.
Yes, indeed.
Our shrunken bellies didn't know what to do with it.
Nope, not at all. Well, I'm Tom Gross. The other voice you're hearing is Dan Ream, and we are the Teachers in the Dungeon, and we hope you all had a happy Thanksgiving.
Yes.
And maybe you're out right now doing a little shopping. Maybe this is the day that you hang up Christmas or
Maybe
holiday.
you're listening to this on the way to go shopping.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Or maybe you got your earbuds in and you're walking around JCPenney or Target or Walmart or whatever store you've got to shop in. But yeah, so we are here to talk about it's our third annual holiday gift guide for your players and DMs. I don't know. I have 5 categories that have, I don't remember if some of them have very specific items attached to them. Otherwise, it's kind of just a general category that you just go crazy. Go crazy in that category. See what you can find. They'll love it regardless.
I went very specific this year.
Excellent.
So,
Okay.
who you want to start?
I'll start.
Okay.
I'll start. So I think one great gift for your players is, when we show up, one of the big parts about playing Dungeons and Dragons, besides the game itself, is the fellowship and the hanging out at the table with other people and having food and snacks and drinks. And so that's where I went with this one. And I think find something really cool for your player or your DM to take to drink at the table. Go crazy. If your group is one that's of age and enjoys having some drinks at the table, go find a craft beer or find some sort of a nice bottle of wine or something like that. I think that's a great
Mead.
Mead and
would
ale.
Would be a good appropriate
indeed.
Set the tone.
Or find if it's a group that's younger, get some cool sodas that you might not find, like the Wild Bills that we had at I had at Gen Con.
Yes.
Find some unique sodas.
How is your debt coming, by the way?
What's that?
How is your debt coming, by the way?
Oh boy, let me tell you, I'm still paying off that mug, but I've got it for next year.
Yes. That's when the dividends roll in.
That's when it happens. Yep. Year 4 or 5, I'm still carrying that mug. That's right. You know it. No, but find some cool sodas or something like that. But the one that I thought of when I came up with this category is I love good coffee. And we've got some friends that we met at Gary Con.
Yeah.
And we've talked to them a couple of different times. They've been on our show. Both times we were at Gary Con. And that would be Smuggler's Coffee.
Yeah.
And Smuggler's Coffee, they've got some really cool blends. And I know that you bought some for your wife. And it was a sampler pack. And so there's a variety in there.
And that was gone relatively quickly. So I think she really liked it. She likes coffee, doesn't drink it a whole lot, but she went through that. So it was good.
In the pack that I got, and I wish I could remember what it was the pack that has the original player's handbook mimicked on the front of it, and I just don't remember what it was called. But Smuggler's Coffee is it's a small company and just great people that are making these coffees, and they love games.
Yes.
They love Dungeons and Dragons. Yeah. They're also Star Wars fans and just kind of pop culture fans, and they just love to have a good time.
Yes.
And they just opened
They're in the process of opening a coffee shop / gaming space.
Yeah. So love to have you support them. If you love or someone at your table loves coffee, they'd be great people to go to.
All right. My first one is related in the comestibles.
Okay.
But based on our experience, I can definitely personally highly recommend Heroes Feast as a Christmas gift for anybody who loves D&D and enjoys cooking, as our friend Chris Metz does.
Yes.
And they are excellent recipe. We tried one; it was wonderful. Now I am hoping he'll make some more. But
he is a good cook.
But I just think that would be a very good gift choice, unique and useful. And it was a New York bestseller, so I know that a lot of people Agreed. And they just released a second edition. So,
Yep.
or not edition, but a second volume. Recipes of the Multiverse, I think, is the subtitle on that one.
Flavors
Flavors
of the
of the
multiverse. And the only reason I knew that right off the top is because that was my number 4.
Okay.
Is to talk about food.
Sorry.
So no, that's okay.
That's
so,
all right. We're being very concise here.
Yes, and you know, it's also top of the mind because we just did talk to the authors of that book. And one thing that I wanted to mention about it, so you've eloquently talked about the content of the book as far as recipes go. They are magnificent recipes. When you flip through them, they're themed. They look delicious in the images. I wish I was a better cook when it comes to stuff like that, but I'll try my hand at something. I gotta look and see what's in there. Both of those books would be magnificent gifts. And where I was headed with that was in talking to the authors. I think it was Michael, might have been Kyle, that mentioned to us that besides just the recipes, there's all sorts of really cool lore and backstory to many of these categories and or recipes themselves that only a D&D player would love.
Right.
And so I think it could even be a great gift for someone like me who I appreciate good food. I'm not the one that's going to make it, but I certainly will flip through these recipe books to look and dream, but also to read some of the stories that they've incorporated in them.
So is that counting as your second one?
That is my second one.
Okay.
Yep.
So my second one, I'm on the same task, and I'll be honest in a way that hopefully proves I'm not a shill. I have my limits on like coffee table books and things like that.
Oh, sure.
That I don't see the value always in shelling out the premium dollars for those.
Sure.
But I got to say, having gone through the Lore and Legends book so that we can interview those folks, I already want to have it back in my hands and read it more carefully. I did go all the way through it, but again, time was short. I had to skim, but that allowed me just to get a feel for the arc, the narrative arc that they created in that book. Plus, the art is just gorgeous, and so you just fall into it. So again, if you've got if you are an individual who has a loved one who is really into D&D and you're not, this is a very safe, wonderful present that they will love. This Lore and Legends book,
Absolutely.
It's got enough content to keep you occupied, but it's also fun to just kind of look at the pictures. So I would definitely recommend that.
And that was something we talked about on that interview just a couple weeks ago is the art, and how when you take the art out of the context of the book and just present it as art, especially the covers, the covers that you see all the time, when you see it in that book out of like off of a cover format, it's like that looks familiar, but look at all the detail in there.
Right.
And then you go back to the book and you're like, yeah, it's all there on the cover of the book too, but you know, sometimes we
You
take
don't
those things
stare
for
at the cover as
Yes.
much.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We take it for granted sometimes.
Grabs your attention, but you don't study it.
Yeah. That's a good one. It's a surefire win for
Yes.
anybody who loves Dungeons and Dragons. So my third one, I'm going to stick general on it because you just got to do the shopping on this one. But mine is go for something unique. I would open up Etsy or any of those, what do you call those, like crafter websites, sales websites, and Etsy's the one that I know and I'm familiar with, and find something really cool that no one else will have at the table. And so some ideas that might be out there is, you know, dice towers or a dice box that your players could have at the table that everyone oohs and ahs over. Maybe a box that's big enough they could roll their dice in it. It's got that nice velvety or soft inside, so you hear the thud of the dice, but it's not like that loud dong 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 dong. Or a couple years ago at GaryCon, I found for you guys those coasters that are the like the character coasters.
It's right over there.
And oh yep, there it is. And those are, you know, they're cork coasters, but you can find some really nice ones as well. But the people on Etsy and those other areas that are role-playing fans, they know what to make. And some of the stuff that they're making is really phenomenal. Stevens Woodworks is the one that I've used in the past to buy some things, but there are dozens and dozens of other people out there that create really, really cool stuff. So look at Etsy or just search online for third-party creators of Dungeons and Dragons goods, and there's an abundance of them out there and some really cool stuff.
Well, I'll piggyback on that because I have a similar one. I want to shout out our friends db3d.io.
Yeah,
that's a hard name to say. But they stepped up so much for our summer camp, and the stuff they gave us was so special, so unique, things the kids had not seen before.
Yeah.
And they have dice towers. They have just sort of these little articulated dragon decorations for the top of a shelf that can kind of peep over and things like that. Definitely something I have not seen. Like, I went all over Gen Con, vendor hall, actually looking for them, although I knew they wouldn't be there, or I knew they didn't have they didn't buy a table there or rent a table, but I thought maybe I might see them. But I didn't see anything even remotely like what they were doing. Yeah. So what they're doing is truly unique, and it's definitely worth a look if you want to get a dice tower or anything like that. It would be very, very well received, I think, by an AD&D'er.
And some of those dice towers are super intricate. There's a dragon one that we gave away, and I'm trying to remember some of the other ones, but they were
just
really
a giant castle.
Yeah. And it's cool because when we are playing Dungeons and Dragons in our game club, those things are on the table.
Nice.
Those things are on the table. The little timeout chairs. Actually, you gave me a timeout chair at our teacher game just recently. Yes. But I see the dice towers on the tables. I see the little timeout chairs on the tables. The kids love them and they're using them. And it makes me smile every time I walk by and I see that chair with a die in it.
Somebody rolled a 1.
So yeah, great suggestion. I love that. So my number 2 is be a little sneaky, okay? Roll some dice and borrow, grab your players or your DM's favorite minifigure, okay? Sneak it away and find someone local who paints and have a custom paint job for your players or DMs, heroes, NPCs, or villains.
You know, my daughter did that for me a few years ago.
Oh, I do kind of remember that.
Yes.
Yeah.
A friend of hers was very skilled at that, so she had him paint Kyrsos for me.
That is cool.
Yeah.
That is cool. Yeah, and so you might think, oh, well, what if I don't get it right? You might need to do a little side interview with the person you're doing that for to make sure that you're not painting a pink shield or something like that. They'll be like, what? But still, or you could get them a gift card or some sort of gift certificate to that local painter for them to go back and say, this is what I'd like on my paint job. A good place to find those people are go to your local game stores. A lot of those people hang out there or even paint for those game stores, or just go online and see. Again, search on Etsy or someplace like that for those painters because they're out there and they are amazing.
All right, well, my number 2 is just, you cannot have a Christmas list for a D&D'er without dice.
Yes.
So even though I'm repeating myself from years past.
Yep, I figured that's where you're going.
But I will personalize this in the sense that I've one specific set that I can speak to directly that I bought at Gen Con that I thought was just awesome was...
Oh, you have it here.
I do have it here. It's from a company called Arsenal, Arsenal. And by the way, I will put all of these links in our show notes.
Good.
But they make a set of dice based on each class. So you've got cleric dice and monk dice and fighter dice. And they're hollow and they're metal and they sound like this when you roll them. Christmassy, right?
Yeah, very Christmassy.
So you can almost imagine Santa sitting at the table with you. But
you roused the creatures in the room, by the way.
So that's one that I would recommend. But I will put in a personal recommendation for our friend Jamie from D20 Dinner.
Yes,
she has commissions open. She's getting the process of opening a dice store, and there are a lot of people who produce excellent dice, and she's one of them. But on top of that, she's one that volunteered her time and effort to introduce our students at summer camp to dice making, and that makes, I think, that is deserving of a little extra push. That
Yep,
if
absolutely.
I will put her. I looked her up. She may be on Etsy, but she's definitely on Instagram. D20 Dinner.
Okay.
And I'll put that link in the show notes, but that's easy enough to type into Instagram and find her.
Yeah.
I believe that's where she does most of her business right now.
Mm-hmm.
But I know she's in the process of getting a shop up and running.
The kids thought her dice were super cool. She donated a couple sets for the prizes, and they thought those were really cool. And I had a couple kids just this week asked me if she was coming back to summer camp because they missed that session. They did something else
nice.
at that time, and they were kind of like, "Oh, I wish I'd have gone to that dice one. That looked really cool." And so they were asking if she'd be there. So for summer camp, we know that she'll have some kids in her session.
Nice.
So good call on the dice.
Yes.
Yeah, can never have too many dice. I'm still trying to fill my my Wild Bill's mug with dice. I'm not. What is the term? Dice goblin? Is that what we call people who like to hoard dice? I've never been that person. I mean, I love dice, but I mean, I've got some dice way back from first edition, that box set that had the little soft plastic dice. And over the years, I've collected some dice, but I've never been one to do mass purchases of dice until Gen Con this year. There's that one booth where they had just a bin of dice, and you got to come over with a cup and just scoop into there. Still wasn't enough to fill the Wild Bill's Gen Con mugs, so that's how I have that displayed right now. So it's probably 3/4 full. So next year Gen Con, I'm going back to that dice place and gonna scoop a cup.
Nice.
Scoop a cup for sure. So my number one is you've already mentioned it, but I saved it for now because I've got some extras that could go along with it, and that is I think books. What D&D player doesn't love books? So I'm going to just throw out a lot of great titles that are potentials. If you check your D&D players or DMs shelves, if they don't have some of these would be good considerations. So I'm going to start with the Lore and Legends, and then I'll piggyback that with their first book, Art and Arcana.
Yeah.
Art and Arcana is the story of all of Dungeons and Dragons up until 5th edition, and then Lore and Legends picks up and tells the story of 5th edition.
Right.
Both magnificent books. They're great companions for one another, but you want a little extra support on the shelf that you're going to put them on because they are hefty and they're well worth it.
Yeah.
We talked to Jim Zub and Stacey King and Andrew Wheeler a month ago about their new book, Places and Portals. So if you have a youngster in your house, or your DM has some kids, or your players have some kids, or you got some kids at the table playing with you, this book, along with the series Young Adventurer's Guide, any of those books are great. I have most of them, and even as an adult, I like flipping through them. They've got some things and ideas in there that I never would consider. They were talking about in our interview about how like they have like a shopping guide for your players to like, what do you get when you're in town at the general store and stuff like that, and like equipment for travel and stuff like that. And so those are really cool books. Then if you move into the world of fiction, which isn't all of this fiction, but anyway, the world of fiction, I'm a huge fan of Ari Salvatore. The Dritz Duerden books in the Forgotten Realms are just flat out great. He has a quintet of books, Ari Salvatore. Now, these go back a little ways, so you might have to do some searching for them, but it's called the Clerics Quintet. It's the story of Catterley and other characters involved in the same world. Dritz is mentioned, and Bruenor Battlehammer, and all those characters are mentioned in this, but they are a part of a different part of the Forgotten Realms. Our friend Brian at school recommended the book to me, and I've devoured them. I've devoured the first 3 of them, and 2 left, but that's a great one. And then don't forget about the Dragonlance books. There is a new trilogy out. It's the first 2 books of the trilogy are out. They released them at the last 2 Gen Cons. Look for those, or just go clear back to the beginning in their original trilogy of the Dragon Chronicles. Those would be great. And then finally, when it comes to books, here are a couple of ideas for playbooks. Don't forget about third-party books like our friends at K Wood Publishing. But if you want to go Wizards of the Coast, they have a new book out called The Shattered Obelisk. I always say it wrong. Obelisk. The Shattered Obelisk, Phandelver and Below. It is a magnificent adventure. I've read through it, and it is probably one of the most cohesive. And if I were running it, I think I would find as a DM, it's really easy to run, but still have a sandbox feel to it. It's so well written. I really, really like it. Its companion comes from one of the sets earlier that is just a story of Phandelver. It has a whole bunch of mini adventures, and this just continues that story. And then I just recently picked this up, and I didn't realize they had done this. The Tyranny of Dragons, I think it's called. It was 2 books. It's the Tiamat story. You had one, and then you had another. They have now combined those two adventures into one book, and I just picked that up. It is, I believe, it's their very first adventure that they made for 5th edition in 2015, and just reading through the introduction. I've not gone through the adventures yet, but just the introduction of it. And it is so loaded with Dungeons and Dragons 5th edition. Where did that come from? 5th edition lore, and talks about things you hear that you would have seen in the movie, like the Red Wizards, the Zentarum. I'm trying to think. The group of nobles that comes together has a faction, and those are all described in this book. Whether your DM or your players end up ever playing this game, this adventure or not, I don't know, but the opening of this book is super, super interesting and fun to read. So books are never a problem for Dungeons and Dragons players, at least in my mind.
Well, that fits very nicely. We didn't even plan this. We
didn't
think, because my number 1 is a book too.
Excellent.
Again, keeping very specific and keeping to people we've worked with, and also books that I personally have had a chance to look at. The Limitless Adventures book series. There's lots of good ones, but if you are buying for someone who's DMs and you know a little bit about the game, then you want to get them Limitless 5e's book on NPCs.
Yes.
In fact, they've got at least 2 of them. And that is something that, honestly, I was just sitting here. I've got a online game to play Sunday.
Okay.
A few days away from what we're sitting here now. And I've been slaving over getting enough NPCs ready. And all of a sudden, I had this on my list, and it suddenly clicked. Oh, I should actually use the book I bought.
Yes.
That would be a good choice. But anyway, that is such a handy tool. Even if you don't use them, word for word. At least you thumb through the NPCs, you get some ideas, you adapt them, saves you time, sparks your creativity. Oh, I never thought of doing that or having that little quirk.
Yep.
I'm going to use that. It's a great book. They do really good work.
And to piggyback off of that, they also have a couple box sets of adventures called DM-less adventures.
Yes.
So if you're in a family and you want to play, but no one has ever DM'd, but you want to try out Dungeons and Dragons, this box set is really cool. Everybody has an opportunity to lead part of the adventure, but you don't have to come up with it on your own because you're using cards that tell the story, and then you just lead that part of the story. When you complete that, it goes to the person to your right or to your left, and they play out their card, and it tells an adventure as you go around the table. It is great. We've been playing it at our game club for kids that we haven't been able to get into a D&D game. We've invited them to come. You're on the wait list, but come and play the DM-less adventures, and they're having a ball. In fact, I think some of those kids will pass on going to an adventure and just stick with the DM-less adventures. They're having so much fun.
And these folks also, Limitless, came and helped us with our summer camp.
They did.
One more reason to help them out back and buy some of their books.
Absolutely. Well, we hope this gave you some ideas for things to look for if you were looking for things for the players at your table, or you're the players and you're looking at your DM thinking, we really should get something for him or her because they put in hours of work for us.
Right.
And sometimes they put up with our shenanigans and all the other good stuff. And so hopefully this gave you some ideas, if not specific ideas, maybe gave you a general direction to go when looking for gifts to buy for the people in your game. So, well, Dan, I'm going to say there's a pumpkin pie just out of reach from where I'm sitting here.
They're not going to let you have it. They're going to kick it away as soon as you get close.
I'm going to work really hard. If I have to stretch where my wrist is just pulling, I might have to do it because that pumpkin pie looks absolutely delicious. Well, we hope everyone had a happy Thanksgiving and welcome you to the holidays.
Yes.
And Hope you have a good time shopping. Stay safe. And until next time, keep rolling those 20s.
Especially when you're in the car.
Yes, especially when you're in the car.